Welcome, Curious Minds, to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into a topic that's, well, it's been buzzing lately, something many of us are curious about, maybe even a little confused by, the world of light fasting, or as it's known in some circles, with Big. You, our incredible listener, you send us a stack of fascinating sources. We've got research papers, a BBC documentary, even a really deeply personal story, all revolving around this idea of eating less. So our mission today is clear. We're here to cut through the marketing noise, really explore the scientific claims, and
Hmm.
separate the well-evidenced benefits from the potentially harmful myths so you can walk away truly well-informed.
It's such a perfect example, isn't it, of how complex wellness information can become, especially once it hits the mainstream. So this deep dive will explore the specific claims around this light fasting. We'll rigorously examine the evidence, or sometimes, yeah, the striking lack of evidence, and we'll even consider the broader context, like how humans have approached eating throughout history. It really just underscores the constant need for critical thinking. When we engage with any health trend, particularly those that sort of arrive promising quick fixes.
Okay, so let's unpack this. When we talk about light fasting today, our sources define a very specific approach. We're not delving into the ancient mystical practices sometimes associated with, things like absorbing the essence of the sun and moon or
Ugh.
special elixirs. As one of the papers we looked at puts it, pretty bluntly actually, those parts are CI, basically, just bragging.
Yeah, exactly. For our discussion today, light fasting refers very specifically to a regimen where over a week you eat normally for 5 days, and then on the remaining 2 days, you consume only about a quarter of your normal daily food intake,
Mhm.
just a quarter. And this particular approach, this reduced eating, it really gained significant traction maybe about 4 years ago, primarily after the BBC aired that documentary, Eat Fast and Live Longer.
Hmm.
We've definitely seen it recirculating quite a bit recently, especially online.
Oh yeah, that BBC documentary. It really captured the public imagination, didn't it? It had some incredibly intriguing anecdotes. Like, there was the story of a 101-year-old marathon runner, completed a race in, what, 8 hours at
Yeah.
101, and he attributed his longevity, his really robust health, no surgeries, no daily meds, to consistently eating only about half.
Half the normal amount of food. Yeah, it's a compelling personal story, makes you really wonder. And the documentary also dug into history a bit, highlighting that surprising tidbit about the U.S. Great Depression in the 1930s. Despite, a significant decrease in living standards for so many, the average American lifespan actually increased by a full 6 years during that period.
6 years during widespread hardship. That's just
Mm.
It's astounding, isn't
Mm.
it? And the documentary didn't just stop at history or anecdotes, did it? It took things a step further with a fascinating real-world experiment. They followed a TV presenter, right? Started with really high blood sugar.
Yeah, a level of 28, which is, well, very concerning, significantly higher than healthy levels. And after 86 hours of fasting, and his fasting was extreme, only water, tea, and a very low-calorie instant soup, like roughly 140th of his daily needs.
Wow, 140th.
Yeah. His body used up all its glucose and started burning fat, and his blood sugar dropped dramatically down to 14.
Yeah.
The documentary actually kind of suggested people might try this periodically.
Hmm. You can see how that would catch on.
Definitely. And what's truly fascinating here is how these compelling stories, these anecdotes from the documentary, they actually helped spark genuine scientific inquiry into, the underlying mechanisms. One of the key pieces of research we looked at points to a really groundbreaking mouse study published in Cell, a very prestigious journal. In that study, mice that were fed the low-protein, low-sugar diet showed this remarkable phenomenon. Their pancreatic beta cells, those are the critical cells, right? They produce insulin, regulate blood sugar. They seem to revert towards a sort of stem cell-like state.
Wow, okay. That sounds incredibly promising, doesn't it? I mean, if that kind of effect could happen in humans, it raises this really exciting possibility that conditions like diabetes might be significantly improved through methods like this. I can imagine listeners thinking, okay, where do I sign up? But
Yeah,
knowing our sources, I suspect there's a crucial dose of reality we need to inject here.
absolutely. A huge dose of reality. While it's incredibly promising as a discovery, the critical caveat, the really big but from the research, is that this effect was only observed in mice. And while human studies on various fasting protocols do exist, sure, the sources we've reviewed really emphasize they haven't been robust enough or significant enough, not enough to be published in top-tier journals like Cell for those specific kinds of outcomes anyway.
So this really brings up an important question then. about the current state of the scientific evidence for humans, particularly for actually treating diseases.
Indeed, it does. And the UK National Health Service, the NHS, they actually provide a very clear commentary on light fasting. Their stance is basically that there isn't yet verifiable safety or proven efficacy for improving diseases in humans. And that's a really vital distinction, isn't it, between intriguing lab finding in mice and a properly tested, medically recommended treatment for people.
Right. Okay. So, if the big health benefits, especially for diseases, are still waiting for stronger proof, it's absolutely critical we also understand the other side. What about the potential downsides? What do the sources really warn us about? Because these don't sound like minor issues.
You're right to highlight the risks. They're significant. For example, drastic blood sugar fluctuations. That's a major concern, especially in vulnerable groups, kids, the elderly, or people who are already unwell. For them, such changes could be genuinely harmful. Dizziness, fainting, maybe worse.
And for someone with an existing health condition, jumping into fasting could potentially make their illness worse, couldn't it?
Exactly. That's a real risk. And beyond just the physical side, there's also a significant concern, mentioned in the sources, about triggering or possibly exacerbating eating disorders, things like anorexia. These are very real, very serious mental health challenges, and drastic, restrictive diets can absolutely provoke them.
That's a really serious point. Another thing that jumped out at me from the research was the risk of a rebound effect. This idea that people might just gorge themselves on the non-fasting days, leading to this cycle of yamir, eating more aggressively, and then starving more extremely.
That's a critical point, yeah.
Mm.
Our bodies are incredibly adaptive, right? When you consistently subject them to severe calorie restriction, your metabolism can sometimes become more efficient. It tries to hold on to energy. And psychologically, being restricted like that often triggers powerful cravings, a desire to compensate. So this complex interplay of biology and behavior, it could absolutely lead to a rebound. You might nullify any initial weight loss or even gain weight and end up with worse overall health. The studies we read emphasize these are, and I quote, not very strange harms, very likely to happen.
Yeah.
But crucially, current experiments haven't been able to definitively rule out these risks yet.
Okay. And if we zoom out a bit, beyond just this specific 5 and 2 definition, the articles we looked at also caution against a whole range of other exaggerated claims sometimes associated with this broader idea of extreme eating restrictions.
Precisely. You often hear these kinds of protocols being touted for all sorts of things, like Sunorenin, enhanced immunity, or anti-cancer or cancer prevention, even reduced cell aging, extended lifespan, and yeah, even back to that mystical absorbing the essence of the sun and moon.
Right. So the experts behind these sources, they're very clear on this point. These grander claims are generally considered, again, the bragging parts, and absolutely not worth suino, basically, wasting your resources and effort on them. They just lack credible scientific backing.
That's a really crucial distinction to keep in mind.
Okay. But what about weight loss? Because let's be honest, that's the primary motivator for many people. Our sources do acknowledge that light fasting can show obvious results in the first couple of months. That's a pretty significant draw.
It is, no doubt. However, there's that crucial caveat again. We desperately need long-term observation. Studies lasting over a year, for example. Because, as we just discussed, the body can adjust. It might become more efficient at absorption. That rebound effect could kick in and nullify those initial gains. And it's also worth noting some experiments have actually found no effect at all on the supposed benefits to insulin cells, which kind of contradicts some of those early hopes sparked by the mouse studies. This whole discussion really makes you question some fundamental assumptions, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About eating. Like, is the idea of 3 square meals a day actually a universally healthy rule for everyone? The sources we explored suggest. Probably not. Think about the historical context for a second. For, what, over 100,000 years of human history? Guaranteed 3-time meals a day? That's only really been possible in the last few decades. For most of our existence, humans experienced sometimes full, sometimes hungry. It was unpredictable.
So our bodies are likely pretty well equipped then to handle eating when we're actually hungry, rather than rigidly sticking to a schedule, especially when we're not really hungry but feel like we should eat. The research suggests a lot of modern health issues might accumulate from that kind of forced eating. It really makes you think differently about our modern eating habits, doesn't it? Maybe we've fallen into a pattern that doesn't always align with our basic biology.
It does indeed.
So, okay, what does this all mean for someone out there who's actually considering trying light fasting? The sources offer a, let's say, nuanced perspective. For individuals who are overweight, the thinking is the benefits might outweigh the harms. Kudabe, if it's applied carefully and ideally with some kind of appropriate guidance.
Right. But it's absolutely essential to remember that light fasting should just be viewed as one possible method for weight loss. It often gets marketed as a kind of a marketing label, but the effects it achieves, they can often be reached through more conventional, maybe less extreme weight loss methods. It might simply sound appealing because, let's face it, 5D City. Eating normally 5 days and less for 2 days, it just sounds easier to achieve than strict daily dieting. And honestly, who hasn't been tempted by the idea of an easier path when it comes to diet?
That temptation is powerful. And it brings us to a really powerful insight. It came from one of the listeners of the original source material we reviewed, someone named Van. Van shared this deeply personal experience that just perfectly highlights the dangers of marketing and misinformation in this space. Van expressed deep concern because their entire family had apparently purchased health products and something called energy flavors over the past year. The family seems to believe that health can be easily obtained, without exercise or reasonable diet, just hoping for quick results from these products.
Oh, that's heartbreaking. So Van tried to reason with them.
Yeah, Van described feeling just powerless because despite their efforts to warn their family, providing evidence, the family just dismissed the warnings. They only believed what they wanted to see and hear from the marketing materials. Van ended up lamenting, perhaps this is just fate. It's such a stark reminder, isn't it, of how easily people can fall into these commercial traps when they're seeking health solutions.
Wow. Yeah, a really stark reminder.
And this story just reinforces that knowledge, especially health knowledge, must be constantly verified and corrected. True weight loss, or really any significant health improvement, it's dushino. It's a result of long-term persistence. It's not about quick fixes or magical products. It just isn't. And crucially, the sources reiterate those critical warnings again and again. Do not try light fasting on children, the elderly, or anyone who is ill. The health risks for them are just far too great for these kinds of unproven methods.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, it seems pretty clear that light fasting, at least in its specific 5 and 2 form, it's not the miracle cure some of the marketing claims it to be. It might have a place as one tool for weight loss, perhaps for some individuals who are overweight and approach it cautiously, but many of the grander health claims, they just lack strong scientific backing right now.
And critically, as we've really explored, it comes with significant safety caveats, especially for vulnerable populations. That cannot be stressed enough. The historical context reminds us that, yeah, our bodies are adaptive. But the present reality, filled with enticing marketing and widespread misinformation, it means we absolutely must approach new health trends with careful, critical thought, always prioritizing verified knowledge over those tempting, easy promises.
So what really stands out to you, our listener, after hearing all this? We've seen fascinating possibilities hinted at in lab mice. We've heard compelling anecdotes, stories that really grab you. But we've also uncovered some really important warnings about safety and about the deceptive nature of quick fixes.
Yeah, and maybe something for you to consider further. Think about this. In an age where information and misinformation about health is just so incredibly abundant, it's everywhere. How do you distinguish genuine scientific progress from clever marketing hype? And what does it truly mean to nourish ourselves, not just physically with food, but also mentally with reliable, well-researched knowledge?